When you think about it, it's actually impressive that the Elimination Chamber has succeeded. Hungry for a big, awe-inspiring stipulation, WWE mashed together elements of Hell in a Cell and a traditional Survivor Series elimination match, with a little dash of Royal Rumble thrown in for good measure. It could have all gone horribly, horribly wrong, like when WCW decided to stack 3 cages on top of each other and everybody got a little bit scared. Thankfully though, the Elimination Chamber has largely been a success since its inception in Survivor Series 2002. Yes, there have been a few wobbles along the way, but the Chamber match has provided us with an array of wonderful memories over the past 15 years or so. However, as with any long-running stipulation, some installments have been more of a success than others. We've locked ourselves away in preparation for this video, watching Elimination Chamber after Elimination Chamber until our eyes bled. The sound of a superstar being hoisted over the top rope onto that hard outer floor now haunts our collective dreams, and we wake up every morning to the sound of another indestructible glass pod imploding, all for you, you lucky, horrible people. So without further ado, I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and I'm delighted to reveal our ranking of all 20 Elimination Chamber matches, from worst to best. Join us. Number 20, the Intercontinental Elimination Chamber in 2015. This was the match that almost killed off the stipulation for good, and while it's not entirely the fault of the wrestlers involved, it's certainly made for difficult viewing. Things started to go wrong when Wade Barrett shoved Dolph Ziggler into Mark Henry's pod, breaking it open before the world's strongest man was scheduled to enter the match. A lot has been made of Henry's incredibly uncertain performance here, but let's all put ourselves in his shoes for a second. Imagine your pod broke open before you were supposed to enter. You'd also not have a single clue what to do. In the confusion, Henry tiptoed into the ring, stood still for a little bit, and then broke up a pinfall attempt. That is not what you're supposed to do in an elimination match, Mark. Later, Sheamus decided to use a little bit of heelish innovation, jamming his necklace into a pod door to prevent it from opening. This would have been clever and different were it not for the fact that the announce team completely misunderstood what was going on. It just came across as another technical malfunction in about rapidly going off the rails. Sheamus did his best to spell out the obvious, removing the necklace with a theatrical flourish when he felt it was safe to enter the match. But the announcers acted as if he'd fixed the non-existent problem, which is a bizarrely nice thing for a dastardly rule breaker to do. Ultimately, Ryback crushed his competition en route to a nice victory, but the match's previous mistakes and the fact that they were all fighting for a secondary championship meant that this chamber is unfortunately remembered as the worst of all time. Number 19, December to Dismember in 2006. December to Dismember should have been brilliant, but is now often branded as the worst pay-per-view in WWE history. The ECW exclusive show featured matches such as Ariel and Kevin Thorne versus Kelly Kelly and Mike Knox, and hardcore legend Tommy Dreamer losing to Daivari. These could probably be filed under bad decisions, but the Extreme Elimination Chamber could have been the show's saving grace. The concept was an intriguing one, with each pod containing a different weapon. Unfortunately, the booking was not quite as innovative. Apparently, Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon clashed over the winner of the match. Heyman realised that the key members of the bout were Rob Van Dam and CM Punk, as the notoriously hardcore ECW fanbase would surely want to see a hardcore icon like RVD win the ECW Championship. Failing that, a Punk victory would be a huge statement of intent, with WWE strapping a rocket to the back of a tremendously popular indie star with huge potential. Instead, Vince is said to have demanded a victory for Bobby Lashley, who can sort of be seen as a Roman Reigns prototype around this time. In order to give Lashley a couple of heels to run through, Punk and Van Dam were eliminated shockingly early, leading an already restless crowd to totally turn on the main event. In order to keep Lashley from winning, heel Heyman had him bolted inside the pod, which is a silly tactic really. Was Bobby supposed to just give up and go to sleep until the match was over? Instead, Lashley smashed through the roof of the pod with his allocated weapon, a table, and cantered to victory. Not many people were happy. Number 18, the Tag Team Elimination Chamber in 2015. Like that time we made Ross sit through a 10-hour video of Matt Hardy laughing, the Tag Team Elimination Chamber match was an interesting idea with horrible consequences. First of all, why were all 3 members of the New Day allowed to compete? I'd have maybe understood if they'd earned the right on a previous show, but WWE just shoved all 3 members in there with minimal explanation. As wrestling fans, I don't think it's too unreasonable for us to expect a little logic and realism. Now, let me break down this match involving 2 matadors, a tiny bull, and a pair of men in red face paint who think they're actually demons. The New Day won the bout using their numbers advantage to last eliminate the primetime players and retain the tag team championships, because of course they did, there were 3 of them. In addition, the whole thing lacked the drama and gravitas of an Elimination Chamber. It felt more like a gaggle of mid-carders jumping around and double-teaming each other, because that's exactly what it was. I should at least give a special mention to Kalisto, who did climb the roof of the Elimination Chamber and fall down onto everybody else. That was pretty good, and he didn't even get stuck like when Homicide tried doing the same thing in TNA. Number 17, the World Heavyweight Championship Elimination Chamber in 2012. Far be it from me to suggest that heel Daniel Bryan was a bad thing. Heel Daniel Bryan often gets overshadowed by face Daniel Bryan, and that's understandable given the fact that face Daniel Bryan was probably WWE's faciest face in over a decade. However, heel Daniel Bryan was magnificent and petty, so it's a real shame that his big Elimination Chamber moment came in one of the weaker matches on this list. There's nothing offensively bad here, and the bout actually contained 1 or 2 innovative moments. It's just that these moments felt really quite silly. I'm not saying that chamber matches can't have silly moments, but the overall theme shouldn't be silliness. Santino Marella survived until the final 2, do you see what I mean? We could pretend that it was a nice underdog story. Can you imagine the internet meltdown if the guy who got beaten up by Snoop Dogg actually had pinned the guy from the indies? You know, the one who made a living out of kicking people's heads off. Mercifully, Bryan forced him to tap out, but it still felt pretty silly. Then again, this show was main evented by Cena vs Kane in an ambulance match, one of the more historically silly stipulations around. Number 16, the Raw Elimination Chamber in 2011. This was the match where John Morrison turned into Spider-Man and parkoured onto the ceiling of the chamber. At this stage, the real Spider-Man may have caught his opponents in a web or beat Macho Man Randy Savage clean, but Morrison remembered that he isn't Spider-Man and simply dropped onto Sheamus with a massive crossbody. It's maybe the most impressive elimination in the history of the chamber match, but unfortunately this couldn't save the bout from being a pretty weak one. There were 2 major things wrong here, the first being CM Punk's every move. Punk's pod door failed to open properly and trapped him halfway through, which was actually a deliberate malfunction, but seemed like Matthew from Botchamania's wildest dreams come true. This allowed Randy Orton to beat up a stuck Punk, drag him into the ring, and easily eliminate him. This pinfall was reversed, however, by none other than the anonymous Raw General Manager. Because if there's anything you want to see in the Elimination Chamber match, it's tedious bureaucracy dished out by a laptop on a plinth. Punk was given a second chance in the match and made his way to the final 2, which brings me to the second major problem here. Punk was on the cusp of greatness, just a few months away from the pipe bomb promo that changed everything. Instead of winning the match, he was easily defeated by John Cena. A very deflating ending indeed. Number 15, the Raw Elimination Chamber match at No Way Out in 2008. This was the first pay-per-view to feature 2 Elimination Chamber matches in one night, which perhaps explains why one of them felt quite a lot emptier than the other. Again, it's not as if this was a bad wrestling match by any means, but like a mini can of Pringles, it left us wanting more. I'm trying to say that this match is the snack-sized Pringles can of the Elimination Chamber world. Leave your favourite Pringles flavour in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more great wrestling content. Pringles. There were a few interesting moments here, such as JBL throwing a post-elimination tantrum and destroying everybody with chair shots, and everybody ganging up to eliminate Umaga. But the fact that I've had to use the word interesting really says a lot about this match. We'll be seeing far more exciting stuff in the many other matches on this list. Ultimately, Triple H won, outlasting best friend Shawn Michaels and very popular underdog Jeff Hardy, and proving once again that he is the best superstar in the history of the universe. Number 14, the WWE Championship Elimination Chamber in 2012. Every single review I read of this match made some sort of reference to CM Punk versus the mid-card, or CM Punk runs through a series of second-rate opponents. I think that's a little harsh given the fact that it featured former NWA World Champion R-Truth. Have some respect. Admittedly, it's easy to see why this bout isn't too popular online. Despite entering first, Punk outlasted all of his challengers to retain the title, while his only believable rival, Y2J, was eliminated in very dubious fashion. After forcing Kofi Kingston to tap out, Jericho continued to beat up the poor guy for no real reason other than to be a dick. As the officials opened the chamber door to let Kofi out, Punk kicked Y2J out as well, meaning that although he was sort of eliminated, he was never really eliminated. It's a sort of Curtis Axel Royal Rumble situation, and I'm still waiting for Axel to get that title shot at WrestleMania. Number 13, the Raw Elimination Chamber in 2010. There were lots of things going on in this one, so hopefully I don't forget everything. Here we go. Sheamus went into this match as a lucky champion, having previously won the title from Cena when John decided to absolutely hurl himself through a table at TLC. The Irishman entered at number 1 and fended off Kofi for a while, only for number 3 entrant Triple H to smile weirdly at him through the pod door like a friendly Santa Claus, only much more cerebral. Elsewhere, but in the same match, Legacy were trying to help Randy Orton by making a terrible mess of everything. Cody Rhodes passed DiBiase a lead pipe from the outside, and Ted accidentally nailed his leader with it. He decided to pin Orton anyway, before being immediately rolled up and eliminated as well. That's a very silly decision by a very naughty boy. Ultimately, Triple H eliminated champion Sheamus and looked to be on his way to Chamber glory again, only to be defeated by perhaps the only more powerful man in the world, Jonathan Q. Cena. So was this Cena's moment? No, absolutely not. While a tired John lay recovering, Vince McMahon brought out Batista and allowed him to defeat Cena for the title, a reward for beating up Bret Hart shortly beforehand. What are you like, Vince? Number 12, Elimination Chamber 2014. Despite somehow turning into the second coming of Hulk Hogan, Daniel Bryan was not yet scheduled to main event WrestleMania 30. This match therefore had even higher stakes than most. Not just the chance for Bryan to become WWE Champion, but the chance for WWE to make everybody happy. Just for 1 year, Vince. Please? Just once? Surprise! Bryan lost. Christmas is cancelled and your birthday is cancelled too. The finish was an infuriating one, although I think we might be able to forgive that given Bryan's eventual triumph at WrestleMania. Still, it was frustrating to see an Elimination Chamber match end in screwy fashion, as Daniel got into a scuffle with Corporate Kane, who wasn't in the match. This, of course, led to Bryan's elimination at the hands of Randy Orton, meaning that the Viper would carry the belt into the main event of WrestleMania against Rumble winner Batista. It's the dream match we never knew we wanted. Thankfully, Bryan did get his moment in the sun, and this match had some pretty good stuff in it too. I especially enjoyed Orton attempting to barricade himself in his pod, only for Sheamus to boot the glass out of the way. The Wyatt family teleported in at one stage to help eliminate Cena, which was either annoying or brilliant, depending on your opinion of Big John. To be honest, it was fine by me because I quite like spooky things. I'm a fun guy like that. Number 11, the SmackDown Elimination Chamber at No Way Out in 2009. Unlike most chambers, which start slowly and build to a big conclusion, this one started off incredibly hot, but sadly fizzled out a little bit towards the end. The major story here was that Edge, the WWE Champion heading into the match, was rolled up by Jeff Hardy in a matter of minutes, immediately guaranteeing that we were going to see a new champion. Let's take a look at the contenders and rank their chances out of 10. Triple H, 9 out of 10. The Undertaker, somehow also 9 out of 10. Jeff Hardy, 5 out of 10. Big Show, 4 out of 10. And Vladimir Kozlov out of 10. Somewhat predictably, it all came down to Triple H and The Undertaker, two absolute titans of the business. Sadly, for whatever reason, things just didn't click too well. And although everyone was hyped to see two of the biggest names in wrestling do battle, it's not really what everybody remembers from this pay-per-view. We'll get onto why later in the list. Anyway, in terms of this match, Triple H won after a valiant effort from the Deadman. In victory, the game proved once again that he is the best superstar in the history of the universe, and he's also probably really good at the guitar. Number 10, SummerSlam 2003. This was the shortest Elimination Chamber match in history and the only one to clock in at under 20 minutes. A big reason for that may have been that it prominently featured Goldberg, a man not renowned for his ability to go long. However, what he lacked in stamina, the WCW legend more than made up for in destruction. Although short by chamber standards, this bout was packed with carnage. First, an enraged Kevin Nash took out several opponents having already been eliminated. This was a masterclass in how to get your heat back, despite wrestling in a stacked match including Goldberg, Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Put somebody over properly, Kevin, go on. Reigning champion Triple H entered at number 5 and was immediately super kicked back into his pod by Shawn Michaels. This looked very cool, but actually gave the game an excuse to hide and conserve energy. It was like in Metal Gear Solid 3 when Ocelot does all those fancy gun tricks. You're just giving us time to recover, you silly blonde boy. Goldberg entered at number 6 and destroyed everyone, and although this may have been predictable, it was still brilliant. He took out Orton, Jericho and Michaels by himself, at one stage smashing Y2J clean through the wall of a pod. He went on to win and everybody was very happy for him indeed. Wait, no. Triple H won this one, proving once again that he is the best superstar in the history of the universe, and good at guitar, and he owns a Nintendo 65, which is like a Nintendo 64, but better. He got it from his uncle who works at Nintendo. Number 9, the SmackDown / ECW chamber at No Way Out 2008. Batista and Undertaker aside, this chamber had a very questionable lineup. Although many will be fond of Finlay, MVP, Big Daddy V, and the Great Khali, they aren't exactly the mega names that scream Chamber Classic. Despite this, the SmackDown/ECW co-chamber managed to totally outshine its Raw counterpart on the same show. It was booked wisely in order to highlight its strengths and hide its weaknesses. By which I mean Taker and Batista entered at 1 and 2 and lasted until the end. All other competitors were taken out either by the Deadman or the Animal, with the exception of MVP, who was actually pinned by Finlay. In fairness, he didn't hit a move on MVP, he just scuttled over to make the pinfall after Undertaker had yanked him from the top of a pod. With a WrestleMania title shot against Edge on the line, it came down to the two biggest names in the match. The pair enjoyed one of the more memorable chamber finishes as Batista scooped Undertaker up in a tombstone position on the outside. Losing balance, he toppled over the top rope into the ring, totally reversing the hold and allowing Taker to nail a final tombstone of his own. It looked both dramatic and silly, which is wrestling in a nutshell, really. Number 8, Elimination Chamber 2013. Despite featuring some pretty damn good action and pacing, this match seems to be one of the least remembered in Chamber history. Perhaps it's because the winner was Jack Swagger, which makes me feel sorry for the guy. Hair? He put in a great effort here and was deservedly given a Mania shot at Alberto Del Rio's title. No, he didn't win, of course he didn't win, but the journey there was fun at least. Mark Henry entered last and Hall of Pained everybody before being shockingly eliminated by an RKO out of nowhere. He then continued to Hall of Pain people for a little bit, just because he's Mark Henry, and that's what he was doing around this time. After the dust settled, we were left with Jericho, Orton, and Swagger. Orton once again struck with an RKO, taking out poor Y2J, but left himself open to a cheeky roll-up from the All-American American. As mentioned, Swagger's eventual shot didn't result in a title change, but it did sufficiently weaken Del Rio, allowing Dolph Ziggler to cash in his Money in the Bank contract the very next night. Never say you don't learn anything from my videos. Number 7, the SmackDown Elimination Chamber in 2011. Just like the 2013 Chamber match, this one was light in terms of a compelling story, but great in terms of action. What little story we had was pretty basic. Edge was the reigning World Heavyweight Champion, now a babyface who liked to telegraph when he was going to spear his opponent by chanting the word spear over and over again. It didn't catch on. Forced to enter the match at number 1, Edge faced a towering lineup of opponents: Big Show, Kane, Drew McIntyre, and Wade Barrett. First though, he'd have to get through old chamber nemesis Rey Mysterio, the man who drew number 2. Interestingly, both men lasted all the way through the bout, setting up a final showdown with each other. The last stage of the match was basically a 10-minute mini classic, as Edge and Rey showed off the incredible in-ring chemistry they share. Despite having body types so different they glitched through each other if they were creator wrestlers, the pair gave us a compelling finale. Eventually, just as he did a couple of years previously, Edge was able to outlast the valiant Rey and emerge victorious. After the match, Royal Rumble winner and General Bastard Alberto Del Rio attacked the champ, prompting Christian to return from injury and save the day. Number 6, Survivor Series 2002. The first examples of certain match types are often tricky to grade. The 1988 Royal Rumble is obviously a little flat compared to both of the precisely planned bouts we saw this year, but it's important to give it a little benefit of the doubt. Sure, Bret Hart may have just been punch-kicking people and taking naps in the corner, but he was probably sent out there with a 6-word brief. Eliminated by MURACO, don't slip early. This makes the inaugural Elimination Chamber match even more amazing because WWE pretty much nailed it first time around. Immediately you'll notice that it was stacked with star power, featuring Triple H, Chris Jericho, Booker T, Kane, and Rob Van Dam. That could be a perfectly sane person's top 5 favourite wrestlers ever, all concentrated in one match. Having never booked an Elimination Chamber before, WWE proceeded to give us one of the most compelling ever. We had unique spots, particularly RVD's frog splash from the top of a pod, which legitimately injured Triple H's throat. HBK, despite being older and recently out of retirement, was given a real chance by his number 6 spot. Ultimately, those numbers would pay off, and fans looked on in delight as Michaels last eliminated his former best friend to win the World Heavyweight Championship. Number 5, New Year's Revolution 2006. This match was the first time somebody could have looked at the Elimination Chamber lineup and felt a little bit shortchanged. Yes, Cena, Michaels, and Angle are 3 of the biggest WWE stars ever, and yes, Kane will be ruining everybody's day in stipulation matches until the end of time, but you could be forgiven for being a little disappointed at the inclusion of Carlito and Chris Masters, or as I like to call them, the Masters of Cool. Amazingly, not only did the mid-card pair enhance the match, they also fulfilled a key role. Their alliance showed the importance of numbers in such an environment, allowing the 2 heels to eliminate both Kane and HBK. Unfortunately, selfishness would be their undoing. With an exhausted Cena the last man in their way, Carlito ordered Masters to clamp on the Master Lock, only to roll his partner up from behind. Cena would, of course, take advantage, eliminating Carlito to win the match, and had things ended there, it probably wouldn't have been this high on the list. Fortunately, the story didn't end with the predictable victory of Super Cena. Instead, Vince McMahon strode out onto the stage, announcing that Edge was cashing in his Money in the Bank contract. This was an incredibly dramatic moment given the fact that it was the first ever cash-in, and also Edge's first ever WWE Championship. Number 4, New Year's Revolution 2005. More like New Year's Evolution, everybody, because the dynamic between various Evolution members played heavily into the event's Elimination Chamber match. Get it? It's actually very funny. Held in Puerto Rico, this pay-per-view was topped off by a very tense, edgy chamber. So tense that it even needed a special guest referee, none other than the Heartbreak Kid himself. Michaels, of course, found himself involved, eating a spear from Edge at one stage before super kicking him into an early elimination. That was more a side plot, however, the main one being the utter dominance of Evolution enforcer Batista. The animal single-handedly ended the night of both Jericho and Benoit before shockingly suffering elimination at the hands of a lightning-quick RKO. Orton's final opponent was fittingly Triple H, the man who'd recently kicked him out of Evolution. Despite being the younger man and the fresher entrant in the match, Randy didn't think about his former friend's rule-breaking ways. Ric Flair distracted referee Michaels, allowing already eliminated Batista to nail Orton and deliver him to the game on a silver platter. Triple H won, once again proving that he is the best superstar in the history of the universe, and really good at guitar, and owns a Nintendo 65, and a quad bike, and he can ride it whenever he wants, and he can do a backflip on it. Number 3, the Elimination Chamber 2017. Last year's Chamber match was a very good one indeed, even if the winner's subsequent push is best forgotten. Unless you're a particular fan of the House of Horrors match, I suppose. The main story here was the rivalry between the reigning champion John Cena and the man he'd recently beaten in an all-time classic at the Royal Rumble, AJ Styles. There were plenty of little side plots such as Baron Corbin's early elimination and huge tantrum, leading to the elimination of rival Dean Ambrose as well. But this was always going to come down to Cena and AJ, or at least that was the feeling. Instead, Bray Wyatt stuck around for long enough to factor into the finish and use Styles and Cena's obsession with being better than each other against them. Shockingly, despite being booked as the far weakest of the three over the course of his career, Wyatt was able to win not only the match, but his first ever WWE Championship. Number 2, the SmackDown Elimination Chamber in 2010. This match was the perfect blend of seriousness and fun, rounded off with one of the most important Elimination Chamber finishes ever. Things didn't get off to a great start, however, as Undertaker was burned by pyro during his ring entrance. Incredibly, the dead man shook off his injuries and competed in the match as though nothing was wrong. The comedy came when CM Punk eliminated R-Truth early on before grabbing a mic and cutting a promo on his remaining opponents, all still trapped in their pods for the time being. Yes, it may have been a direct ripoff of his shenanigans at the Royal Rumble a month prior, but it was still very funny. Funny promos aside, however, this match really kicked into a higher gear towards the end. We were given a very unique final three of reigning champion Taker, heel Chris Jericho, and John Morrison. Sure, he may have been the next to go, but seeing Morrison in such company provided a very unique dynamic for a little while. Eventually, with Undertaker on the verge of victory, Shawn Michaels burst out from underneath the chamber, super kicking his foe and handing victory to Chris Jericho. Y2J's expression was priceless, while HBK didn't seem to care at all that he'd given the title to a former hated rival. His motive? The prospect of a WrestleMania rematch with the Dead Man. Number 1, Raw Elimination Chamber at No Way Out 2009. Yes, our best Elimination Chamber of all time is the one won by a man who wasn't even supposed to be in it. Having lost the WWE Championship earlier in the night, Edge somehow secured himself a place in the Raw Chamber instead, attacking Kofi Kingston during his entrance and locking himself inside the pod. We then got Mysterio versus Jericho to start things off properly, and as you'll have learned by now, both men are two of the greatest performers in Elimination Chamber history. They didn't battle for too long, however, briefly teaming up to eliminate Kane and Mike Knox. Let's just take a second to applaud Mike Knox for being a part of the best Elimination Chamber of all time. Clap, clap, clap. The final entrant was none other than the reigning champion, Large Match John. And what followed was one of the most intelligent moments in Chamber history. Mysterio, Jericho, and Edge all realized, hey, that's John Cena, the strongest man in the history of the world, except maybe Triple H. If we team up right now, we can stop him from inevitably winning this thing. The trio did just that, putting aside heel and babyface dynamics to blast Cena with a series of consecutive finishes, which was enough to keep him down for a shocking 3 count. Not long after, Mysterio cradled Y2J for a 3 count, setting up the final showdown with Edge. We already know that Edge and Mysterio share a certain chemistry, but here the stakes felt even higher than usual, given Edge's status as an imposter in the match. The Rated R superstar disorientated his opponent by hoisting him into the side of a pod as hard as humanly possible, a very clever tactic. He then nailed a climactic spear, somehow ending the night as world champion, despite losing his belt in the opening match. And that's our list. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and you can follow me on Twitter here. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.